Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about how you can use the Shapes panel, so right here in Cricut Design Space, to help you make or cut pieces for your quilt with Cricut Maker. So the first thing you want to do is start a new canvas, a new project in Cricut Design Space. And you're going to click on this Shapes menu over here. And you'll see it brings up different options: square, circle, triangle, all the different shapes, and the score line. The one that I tend to use the most when I'm cutting fabric for quilts is the square, and it says square, but it's also a rectangle. So we're going to click on the square. Now, for the quilt that I'm making for my daughter's room, I need squares that are 5.5 inches wide. So up here, all I have to do is go to the size, and I type in 5.5, enter, and it will adjust the size for both the width and the height. And I said this could be a rectangle as well. What you have to do is unlock it. So you can click here and unlock it, or you can click up here and unlock it, and then it locks back. Okay, so if I wanted a rectangle that was 5.5 wide, but I wanted it to be twice as high, I could enter 11 here, and I now have a rectangle that is 11 inches high and 5.5 inches wide. I'm going to take it back to a square and show you one other thing that we can do with this shape. If you want to cut triangles for the half square blocks, you can easily do this with the Shapes menu as well. In the Shapes menu, there's a triangle, but if you click on it, you'll notice that you can't really adjust it too much. It's kind of always this shape of a triangle, not a right angle triangle. So even if I unlock it, I'm never going to make it a right angle triangle. But that's okay, because we can do it with our square. So what we need to do is size your square to the appropriate size. And if you've never made half square triangle blocks before, you're going to want to read some instruction on it, because you do need to leave a bigger allowance for your seams. But it's easy to do. So you size your square, and then you go into Shapes, and you're going to choose a score line. So here's my score line. Now I wanted to cut this square exactly like that. So I want it to rotate. I'm going to go up here, and I want it to rotate at a 45-degree angle. So now we have our diagonal score line. I want it to be exactly the same size as my square. So I'm going to make it 5.5, and now I have a score line that is exactly the same size as my square. Oops, I just made it bigger. Okay. Now I have a score line that's exactly the same size as my square. And it's kind of hard to see it on the square, so I'm just going to change the square to a lighter color so you can see it. Now if I want these to line up perfectly so that I don't have any cuts in the wrong place, here's a little trick for doing that. Take my square, and up here where it says position, I'm going to put it at an easy position. So I'm going to put it at 1 on the X angle and 1 on the Y angle. Okay, so my square just moved to right here on my canvas. Now I'm going to take my score line, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to move it to 1 on the X angle and 1 on the Y angle. Now they are perfectly lined up, and I'm going to get 2 perfect triangle cuts from this. However, it's still a score line. So here's what you do to make it a cut line. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to attach my 2 layers right here. That lets my machine know that I want this line to be in exactly this spot on this square. Still a score line though, so let's go over here and we are going to change in the layer attributes, we're going to change it to a cut line. And now you have a square that cuts with a cut line down on the diagonal to create two triangles, which you can use in your half square blocks for quilting. And you'll see if you go to make it that they are cut as one cut in one piece. Another trick is, I'm just going to delete this line here. So all we're left with is our square. So if I were to cut multiple squares, so let's say I could cut 6 of these squares on my piece of fabric that could go on my mat. So I have the option. I can go copy and paste, and I can put my 6 squares and I can line them up really close so that I don't waste much fabric. However, when the maker cuts it, there's going to be a little thread here, and there's more chance that that is going to catch on the blade or something like that. And so there's a better way to do it. Let me show you. So we're going to go back to our original square. We want it to be 5.5. I know that on my mat of 12 inches, I can cut 2 squares across. So I'm going to double the width of this square. First of all, I'm going to unlock it and I'm going to double it. So my width is now 11. And if I want 4 squares of the same size, I can make my height also 11 inches. So now I have an 11 inch by an 11 inch square. And I'm just going to do the same thing that I did with the score line to make the triangles, but I'm not going to put it on a diagonal. So I'm going to make this score line as tall as my square, and I'm going to line them up on the top axis. So I want to put my square back to 1 and 1, just because that's an easy one to remember for me. And now my score line, I want it right in the middle of this square. So 11 divided by 2 is 5.5, plus the 1 inch that you have over here. So I'm going to take my score line and I'm going to position it at 1 inch plus the 5.5. So I'm going to position it at 6.5 on the x-axis. And now my y-axis, I need to move it up. I'm going to move it up to 1 to meet up with this. And now I have a line that goes perfectly through my square. I am going to do another one to cut it the other way. So I'm just going to repeat the steps. I'm going to make it 11 inches. I'm going to rotate it because we want it to go the other way. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And this one I'm going to position at 1 on the x-axis and 6.5 on the y-axis. See, who said junior high math didn't come in handy? So now you have 4 perfect squares. There's still score lines though, so let's change that to a cut line. Let's change this to a cut line. And we're going to select all, and attach. Now when you go to make it, you'll see that on your mat, your 12 by 12 mat, you have a piece of fabric that is going to perfectly cut you, or cut for you, 4 5.5 inch squares. So that's how you can use the Shapes panel, and only the Shapes panel, to create cut pieces for your quilts. Have fun!